that frizzy hair for me. Oh well, let's get to it. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to create this super easy botanical handmade watercolour card. I used very standard watercolours for this piece. I didn't use my Winsor & Newton palette as I think that can be out of people's price range and I wanted it to be accessible to everybody. I also decided to release this video in real time for free over on my channel, so if you enjoy this video make sure to check that out as I go over all of my tips and tricks and really get in depth on how to create this painting. So for this particular painting I really wanted to focus on the colour palette and I wanted to use complementary colours, so I decided to go for a yellow and a dark deep purple. So for this particular tutorial I decided to treat every single element as an individual. And what I mean by this is I decided to use a different colour for each stage. So for example, I painted some roses and they were all the same colour and that was the only thing that was that colour. So to have these contrasting colours within the purple and the yellow, it was really nice to have individual standpoints within the painting that you'll see me create in just a second. You'll also see me add a little bit of red to that yellow. Yes, I did want the bright yellow, but I think it was a little bit too much and I didn't want it to wash out on the paper. So although I did add that red to it, it was still yellow. It was just a little bit more muted and it stood out a little bit more on the paper, which is really nice because it meant the purple didn't stand out too much. So for the next part of this tutorial I went on to paint roses using the red watercolour, and I decided not to really talk about this too much because I have a full video already available on my channel on how to paint these roses, so I will link that down below in the description and check that out if you want to learn how to paint watercolour roses. And aside from that we will get back to the painting. So I decided to only put down a couple of roses to begin with as I wanted the distribution of colour to be very equal for this particular painting. What I mean by this is I didn't want to add too many roses and make it really difficult to add down the rest of the flowers that I wanted to add with all them different colours. So once I'd got down the roses I went in with the yellow to add some more flowers, and I made these a little bit smaller as I wanted that variation between larger and smaller flowers. I didn't want everything to be the same size. And for this particular flower, because it was a little bit smaller as well, I wanted it to look really cute, so I had that very oval shaped petal. I think it makes things look a little bit softer and therefore a little bit cuter in my opinion, so I decided to do that just to tie everything together. I think the yellow worked really well at doing that for this style of painting. After this I then went in with the purple to create a completely different style of flower again. This time I decided to mix things up a little bit more, so in comparison to that yellow flower the petals were a lot thinner, there was a more sharper edge on the end of each petal, less of that oval shape. And I also intentionally didn't connect these petals, whereas with the yellow I wasn't too bothered about that, so I left that centre bare as I wanted that distinction between each petal within the flower. I found the easiest way to do this was to put the petals down opposite to each other, so the top, the bottom and then the two sides. This made it easier for that overlapping not to happen. Whereas if you do them side by side rather than opposite, you are more likely for the colours to bleed together and make them tiny little errors. So just something to be conscious of there. And then after getting down these purple flowers, I decided to add some of that green botanical element to the bottom of this card, and I made sure that all elements were slightly coming into the centre at the bottom. So everything has a little bit of a curve to meet, but nothing is touching. And this is your chance to really experiment with the paint. So you can do completely different leaves, for example. All of mine were completely different. I wanted to mix and match and try new things. So I would recommend going crazy. Do whatever you feel is best for your artwork. So I only did the bottom of the card with the green, and before I added any more of this down, I wanted to go in and just add a few more flowers, as I didn't want the green to completely overwhelm the card. So I would recommend just taking a little look back at the rest of that negative space and deciding, if I was to put loads of green down now, would that be too much? Should I add some more flowers, more roses, more of the yellow, purple, whatever you decide is best for you. I think I added slightly more yellow because this is my favourite colour, but again, it's whatever you want to do. This is your artwork. Also, because I only added a couple of petals to the purple, adding that green allowed a little bit more time for this to dry, so I could then go in and fill in the rest of the petals for this flower. And the reason that I let this dry is because it's a lot easier to add layers when your paper is dry, and you can clearly see the distinction between the petals even though they are overlapping. And if the paper was still wet and you tried to do this, you wouldn't be able to see that, as everything would just merge together. And now, because we have that base structure down at the bottom of the card with the green all slightly merging together within the centre, the rest of the green that we add down now, we can experiment a little bit more. Everything is moving in that general direction, but you can add different elements to this painting. I would always recommend trying these new styles. So some of my leaves, I really wanted to have that quote unquote perfect look, but some of them I very quickly went in with the paintbrush and just painted a leaf. I wasn't too worried how it turned out. I didn't want to go back in and correct anything, having that more natural feel, so it's whatever you see fit. I would also recommend trying to get the thinnest lines possible for the botanical element. It's a really good way to practice doing this in general, but I do think it has that more delicate feel when the lines are slightly thinner. So that was definitely something I wanted to achieve for my artwork in particular. And then once you're happy with the amount of flowers that you've got down, this green is a really good way just to fill in the rest of that space. So taking a step back, looking at the whole piece and deciding where something is missing. If you've got a big gap in particular, you can go in and add really big leaves just to fill that area. So it was really nice to be able to do that, and I didn't have to worry about how it was going to look overall, because this is very easy to do. And just filling in that little bit of space, everything ties together really nicely. And then for the final stage of this painting, I went back in with that purple and put a few dots within the centre of my yellow flowers, as I thought this tied everything together really nicely in terms of colour. And then of course I took the washi tape off to finish. So that is everything for this video. I really hope you've enjoyed this watercolour tutorial, and don't forget you can find the real-time tutorial over on my channel. Go really in depth on how to create this piece, so it would be really nice to see you over there. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time for some watercolour card tutorials, which I'm really excited to create. Bye guys!